Everyone thinks self-driving cars just need better software. But Waymo bolts on $75,000 of spinning lasers and radar that Tesla flatly refuses to touch. Same road, same problem, two leaders chose opposite eyes. This isn't a spec sheet argument. It decides whether a car spots a person crossing in the dark or a stopped truck looming at highway speed. Get it wrong and someone dies. Get it right and you define the cost, safety, and reach of every robotaxi you'll ever climb into. Start with how Lidar actually sees. The sensor fires thousands of laser pulses a second, then times how long each one takes to bounce back off the world. Light travels at a fixed speed, so that tiny delay is a ruler. It converts directly into distance. Stitch millions of those measured points together and you get a 3D point cloud, a live sculpture of the road, accurate to a couple of centimeters. Here's what makes it special. Lidar measures depth physically. It doesn't guess how far the truck is by how big it looks. It clocks the actual distance, and it doesn't care whether the object is black paint, a person in dark clothes, or a shape it has never seen before. To Lidar, they're all just surfaces returning light. But nothing is free. A single sensor once cost as much as a used car, and the spinning units were bulky enough to look like a bucket on the roof. Prices are falling fast, some units are now in the low thousands, but there's a deeper weakness. Those laser pulses hate weather. Heavy rain, fog, and snow scatter the beam, throwing back false points or swallowing real ones. So Lidar gives you certainty about distance, as long as the air stays clear. Which raises an obvious question. So why would anyone skip that? Because cameras see the world the way you do. A camera is a passive sensor. It just soaks up light and captures a flat 2D image, no lasers, no measuring. All the intelligence sits behind it. A neural network, software that learns patterns from millions of examples, stares at those pixels and infers everything, how far away things are, what's moving, whether that red circle is a stop sign or a balloon. And here's the payoff. Cameras are absurdly cheap, tens of dollars each, and they read the stuff lasers physically can't. Color, text, context. A green traffic light, a speed limit sign, the glow of a brake light 2 cars ahead. Lidar sees a shape, but a camera reads the meaning. That's the case for vision. But now the weakness cuts the other way. That depth was never measured. It was estimated, a confident guess from a 2D picture. Blind the camera with low sun or a dark night, and the guess gets shakier. And show the network something genuinely new, an overturned truck, a couch in the lane, a costume it never trained on. And it can freeze or misjudge because it's matching patterns, not truly understanding. Cameras see richly. They just aren't always sure. Now watch how Waymo answers that uncertainty. It refuses to trust any single eye. That's what the $75,000 buys. Not one super sensor, but 3 kinds stacked together. Lidar for measured distance. Radar, which pushes radio waves straight through rain and fog to clock a car's speed. And cameras for color and context. Each one covers the other's blind spots. This is sensor fusion. When the camera hesitates in glare, the Lidar still has the distance. When the laser drops out in heavy snow, the radar still sees the truck. Here's why that price tag makes sense to Waymo. Layering the sensors shrinks the margin for perception error, and a smaller margin is what lets them pull the human safety driver out of the seat entirely. In Phoenix and San Francisco, an empty Waymo picks you up today. No one behind the wheel. That's the reward for spending the money. But certainty is heavy. At tens of thousands of dollars in hardware per car, you can't cheaply build millions of them. And because the system leans on detailed pre-mapped streets, the cars stay fenced inside cities Waymo has carefully scanned. So Waymo has driverless rides right now, just not everywhere and not cheaply. Which is exactly the door Tesla walks through. Tesla makes the opposite bet, and it starts with a stubborn argument. Roads were built for human eyes. Signs, lights, lane paint, all designed to be read by 2 cameras in a skull. So if humans drive with vision and a brain, Tesla says a car should manage with cameras and a good enough neural network. They call it Tesla Vision, and they didn't just skip Lidar. They ripped the radar back out of cars that already had it. Here's the money move. Strip the expensive sensors, and the hardware gets cheap enough to bolt onto every single car they sell. Every one of those cars becomes a camera on wheels, streaming real-world clips back to train the network. Millions of vehicles, billions of miles. A fire hose of data Waymo's few hundred cars simply can't match. That's the whole thesis. Scale the data, and the software eventually sees well enough on cameras alone. But strip the safety net, and everything rides on that network. When it misreads a shadow or an overpass as an obstacle, the car can brake for nothing. Critics call it phantom braking. Estimate depth wrong at speed, and the failure isn't a jitter, it's a crash. Tesla is betting the AI improves faster than those mistakes can hurt it. So who sees better? Neither, because they're not answering the same question. The whole fight comes down to one trade, cost versus certainty. Lidar buys a safety margin you can bank today. Cameras bet that AI gets sharp enough that you'll never need to buy it. Now the $75,000 finally makes sense. Waymo pays it to delete the human driver right now. The sensors are the price of taking your hands off the wheel this year. Tesla skips it to make self-driving cheap enough to put in your driveway later, and to hoover up the data that might make cameras alone good enough. One is buying safety with hardware. The other is buying scale by betting on software. Neither is simply right. They're solving for different timelines and different business models. Driverless in a few cities now versus maybe everywhere someday. The $75,000 gap isn't an engineering mistake. It's two different bets on when the future arrives. So here's what it actually means for you. When you see a robotaxi, don't ask which company is smarter. Ask what it's optimizing for. Spinning lasers on the roof mean a company paying up front for certainty in a handful of mapped cities. Bare, camera-only cars mean a company betting cheap hardware, plus a mountain of data will get there eventually. Same road, two clocks. The hardware on the roof tells you which bet you're riding. The sensors are only half the story. The other half is the map, the centimeter-perfect 3D model of the city these cars drive inside. How do you scan an entire metropolis down to the curb and keep it current as the world changes? That's the machine we open next. Subscribe and we'll show you.